Welcome everyone to our session, Modernizing Server Management and Connectivity with Azure Arc. My name is Thomas and I'm joined by Aurnov here, who is a PM on the Azure Arc team. Aurnov, thank you very much for joining. And so we obviously have some interesting things here in this session. Can you talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about in this session?
Absolutely. We're going to talk about modernizing your server management and connectivity with Azure Arc, and Azure Arc supporting hybrid, multi-cloud, and edge environments. We're going to show you how you can onboard to Arc and connect your servers. And then we're going to get after it and really talk about some of our newer modern server management capabilities, showcasing those as well as our roadmap for upcoming capabilities as well. So you get a good sense of where we're going from an Azure Arc enabled server perspective. So really excited for today's session, and let's get after it.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Aurnov. So let's get started. And I will start a little bit talking about an overview of Azure Arc for those who are not familiar with it. And then we will jump into how you actually can quickly onboard a new server and what your different options are, as well as the different network connectivity options you have. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so first, let's have a look what Azure Arc is. So Azure Arc really is a management tool which allows you to connect your on-premises or edge or multi-cloud resources, in this case, our servers, to Microsoft Azure and to the Azure control plane. So you can manage it directly from Azure as it would be an Azure resource, such as an Azure virtual machine, for example. And this works with Linux, Windows servers, as well as physical and virtual servers as well. So let's have a quick look what that actually means, right? If you go to Azure and you're familiar with Azure and the Azure control plane, and speaking about the Azure control plane, when I speak about the Azure control plane, I'm going to show you this in the portal, but this is also all the way through APIs and command line tools, etc., available as well. So because it's really baked into Azure Resource Manager, you can use it and automate it as well. But again, to make it easy, I'm going to show you all of this in the Azure portal. So as you know, like everything in Azure is an object, right? So you have, for example, virtual machines, disk, network security groups, virtual networks, network interfaces, disks, they're all like basically objects and resources in the Azure portal. And so they're part of a resource group, they're part of a subscription, and then you can use tagging, for example, to tag those resources as well, to sort them, for example, and so on. And this is great if you manage a lot of Azure resources, right? This is really, really helpful. Now, our customers told us, hey, but what if I have servers, for example, which are running outside of Azure? How do I manage them as well? Now I need to have like two management tools, two views to actually do all this. But with Azure Arc now, we can onboard them to the Azure control plane. So for example, if I want a list of all my servers, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select virtual machines here. So I get my Azure virtual machines. So I do that. And then I also want to enable or show my Arc enabled servers, which are basically here my Arc enabled machines, right? So I've got to select those, and you can see I already onboarded 20 of these servers here. So I can select that, and then I hit apply. And now I just get all my servers in one single view, right? So you can see here right now, the blue ones are my Azure virtual machines. And here, the purple ones are basically my Arc-enabled servers. So you can see here I have virtual machines here, as well as my Arc machines. And you can see that both look exactly the same, right? They look like Azure resources. They're part of a resource group here. They're also part of a subscription, and I can use tagging for both of these. So for example, if I now want to see just all specific servers from a specific cost center, I can go in here and say, okay, I want to have these servers. And now I can basically sort them out, and they're part of the resource manager. So that obviously gives you the visibility, but also gives you the possibility to now onboard management services to these machines and actually manage them directly from Azure. So if I click on one of these resources, for example, you can see here, it takes me here. It looks like an Azure resource, like something you would actually use in Azure, but this one here is running outside of Azure in my data center or edge location, or even at another cloud provider. And you can see here that I have some information that this one is, for example, also joined to a local domain. It doesn't need to be domain joined at all. It can also be a work group server and so on. But you get all that information here. But for the rest, it looks like an Azure resource, right? It's part of a subscription. You can use role-based access control as you can do in Azure. So I can give permissions to other administrators to manage that resource. And then we have a ton of different management tools, again, which will Aurnov talk a little bit later about as well. So how do you onboard your servers to the Azure control plane using Azure Arc? Therefore, I think that one of the easiest ways is actually go to Azure Arc in the Azure portal. That is where all the different types of Arc management services are there. For Arc-enabled servers, you basically just go to machines, and that's where you see also the already connected servers here, which I have available in my environment. To add a server, I can simply go to add and create, and then select add. And then we provide you with a couple of different options to actually onboard these servers, right? So you can see here we have ones for single servers, which basically allows you to generate the script, and we will go through this, how that actually works, just as an example. And so you can see everything you need. But then we also have options if you do want to automate this, and we want to, for example, onboard multiples, hundreds or thousands of servers to your environment. You can do that too. We also have something directly integrated into Windows Server now with the Windows Server installer there, which we'll show in a bit as well. And then we have also the possibility to connect servers with our multi-cloud connector as well and add servers from there. And if you're already using, for example, things like update management and you haven't really done that, so you could also use that to basically also deploy the Arc agent there as well. So what do you need to onboard these servers? So for that, we can simply generate a script here. And I'm going to do this again for a single server where I don't have the Windows Server installer, for example, and I just want to have an interactive thing to do. So what I need to do here is I obviously need to put this server in a subscription, again, because it will become or look like and behave like an Azure resource, because it is an Azure resource. So I can go and basically also need add a, here we go, like let's do this one, a resource group. We also will connect the agent to a specific Azure region, right? That's where metadata is stored, as well as like where we connect the server to, where the agent stores to. So usually you pick the closest one or the one which basically fits in your environment. I could now select, for example, Switzerland North here in my case. And then I tell, okay, which operating system, again, could be Linux or Windows. And then if there is a SQL already, we can detect that as well. Now, we also have a choice here of different network connectivity options, right? So we can use the public endpoint. In that case, the agent, which we install on the server, connects to the public endpoints in the Azure control plane, basically obviously encrypted and all that. And you can find some documentation which the endpoint URLs are on Microsoft Learn in our documentation as well. But then in other environments, you can also go through a transparent proxy. You can use private link, which then means the traffic goes over a VPN or express route. And then we have a new technology, which is currently in preview, which is the Arc Gateway, which you can basically have one single gateway instance and all the Arc-enabled servers connect to this one, and that one connects to the APIs in Azure. So we can select these ones here. Now, for now, let's just do the public endpoint one. We can then select already if we want to tag that resource as well. We can also do that obviously later. And then at the end, we basically get a script. In this case, because we selected the Windows machine, obviously we get a PowerShell script, which you then can copy paste or download and then run on that machine directly. And this will then basically go out and download the agent, install that agent, and then connect that agent to my Azure subscription and then put the server into the right resource group. And it will show up here in the list of all my Arc-enabled servers. In just a few seconds later, I can basically go and start managing that server. So let's have a look at some other options here as well. I mean, I showed you now a couple, but if you go to the documentation page, I talked to you. There's also a Arc Gateway option. Again, if you look at this is in a nutshell, this is nothing else than an extension for an Arc-enabled servers, which has then a gateway or an Arc proxy, so called, option, which then all the other on-prem server connect to, and that server then connects to this endpoint. Now, again, there's multiple other ways of onboarding servers. So again, I showed you the deployment script option. If you use Windows Admin Center to manage your service, you can do that too. There's more PowerShell options, and then we have Arc Setup, which I'll show you in just a bit, which runs on all Windows Server 2025 servers, for example, as well. Basically, it's not installed. It's just a little information there. Once you want to connect, it will download the agent and then do that. So there's no need to remove it. It's just a simple pop-up there. But again, it will then go out and download the agent once you actually want to connect that server. And then we have also options to actually connect these servers at scale, right? So again, you don't want to probably just run this script and then log in on each of these machines all the time. You can then, for example, use a script which uses a service principal, which has only rights to onboard Arc-enabled servers. And then you can basically use any automation tool you have out there and send it to these servers. And they will be basically go out, download the agent, install it, and then connect it. And you don't have to have any interactive action there as well. There's also some things where we show you how you can do it using Configuration Manager. So if you have System Center Configuration Manager, you can use that too. There's also some information how you can do with that with a custom task sequence, how to use it with group policy, Ansible playbooks. Again, if you already use automation update management there as well. And then last but not least, if you have connected your VMware environment using Azure Arc, you can also directly onboard all your VMware machines to the Azure Control Plane as well. And same thing for System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And again, you can build your own ways because at the end, it's very, very simple to actually do this and onboard these resources. So let's have a quick look at something specifically to Windows Server. So once you have Windows Server, again, you basically are familiar with this little pop-up here, which shows up on Windows Server 2025, which you then can actually say, hey, yes, I want to connect my server to Azure Arc. And then basically once you hit that launch Azure Arc setup, this will then basically go and install the specific agent, right? Before that, no agent is present on that machine. So you can just simply ignore this if you don't want to connect your server as well. And then once you're actually going through, you can then follow this wizard and go through and basically connect that specific server here as well, where you then can log in, select your Azure tenants, your subscription, your resource group, and your Azure region, and then select how you actually want to connect to this. And then this will then show up in the, for example, Server Manager that now Azure management using Azure Arc is enabled. And then you can basically show the machine shows up in Azure as well. Okay, so this was how you can onboard your servers to Azure using Azure Arc and with all the different connectivity options you have there. So Aurnov, now it's obviously your time to shine and tell a little bit more what you can do with these servers once they are onboarded to Azure using Azure Arc.
Absolutely. So we're really thinking about Azure Arc as experience for modern server management. And so this is for our customers that are using Configuration Manager, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. You're probably noticing a lot of Azure Arc's server management capabilities are mapping clearly to what was capable with SCCM, MECM. And that's really where we're positioned for modern server management, really similar to what Intune has done for client. That's where Azure Arc is going, as the future of server management from cloud to edge across your non-Azure environments for your on-prem Windows server, as well as your Linux machines as well. So one of our major announcements this last Ignite was actually Windows Server Management enabled by Azure Arc. And this allows our customers that have Windows Server software assurance or active subscription licenses, as well as those that are enrolled in Windows Server pay-as-you-go, access to core Azure management capabilities. This includes Azure Update Manager from an OS patching perspective. This includes Azure Machine Configuration, that's Azure Policy Guest Configuration that allows you to set OS configuration, application configuration, benchmarks, and get a governance perspective on your Arc-enabled servers. That includes Azure Change Tracking and Inventory from a reporting perspective to see what are the software running on your machines and their change history. And that includes Azure Run Command to remotely and securely run scripts and automation on your servers connected to Azure Arc. Now, these are all capabilities that are available also natively for your Azure virtual machines, and they're also available for your Linux servers at a cost as well. And so what we're seeing is this consistent Azure management experience for modern server experiences from cloud to edge through Azure Arc. And through this Windows Server management experiences, we've made that more accessible because now these services, these Azure management capabilities, are no additional cost, not only for your Azure virtual machines, but also your Arc-enabled servers that have Windows Server software assurance, active subscription licenses, or are enrolled in the Windows Server 2025 pay-as-you-go capability. So let's get after it, and let's actually showcase some of these capabilities that are mapping to Configuration Manager right in your Azure portal. Here we are in Azure portal. We've logged in the Azure Arc overview page that we know and we love. And now we're going to actually dive into our licenses view. And so here we see Windows Server Azure benefits and licenses. And this is going to pull for us all of our Azure Arc enabled servers that are Windows Server instances that are properly licensed. And so what we can choose to do here is we can actually choose to select one or more Azure Arc enabled servers to enroll in these benefits. So here I'm going to select this machine, Arc DPEUS, and I'm going to go ahead and select Activate Benefits. And when I select that Activate Benefits view, I see some of the different Azure management services and capabilities that I'm able to attest to as a free benefit. That includes Azure Update Manager, Azure Change Tracking and Inventory, Azure Machine Configuration. Moreover, this will give access to new Windows Server management capabilities as well, like Windows Admin Center, remote support, advanced networking, best practices assessment, and Azure Site Recovery configuration that are typically only for your Windows Server 2025 pay-as-you-go machines. So you get access to these new capabilities and you get these existing Azure management services at no additional cost. So here I am. And then after I select this, I can select and make that attestation, and voila, I can activate. And upon making that activation, I'm actually going to benefit from being able to select those specific machines and enrolling in those benefits. So that's an overview of the Windows Server management capability. But you're probably thinking about what those management services are that I'm really getting with Azure Arc. So top of mind, especially for our Configuration Manager customers, is Azure Update Manager. Azure Update Manager allows you to get centralized OS patching status and assessment, as well as delivery of OS patches across your Windows and Linux servers, across your Azure VMs, and your Arc-enabled servers that are running on premises. So you can think VMware, SCCM, Hyper-V, as well as Nutanix, and non-Azure environments like AWS and GCP. So it's really your centralized OS patching portal. You have built-in recommendations, and you have a clear visibility into the OS patching status across your entire state. And this is available at no additional cost for your Windows Server management enabled servers. And so here you can see where you have periodic assessment enabled, where you don't have enabled. You're able to manage and actually get history of your pending updates, and you're able to set up maintenance configurations as well. So you can set up that maintenance window to actually schedule updates. So why don't we go ahead and we can also double click into some of our reporting, and we can see some of our out-of-box reporting we have include our update compliance report that's going to showcase our compliance status across our entire fleet. And so you can see all of the out-of-box recommendations that we have. And in this case, we have a really high amount of non-compliance. So we're a little bit behind on our patching schedule, but we have that visibility across our Azure VMs, across our Arc servers, our Windows and our Linux estate, all from one place. And the beauty is with Azure Update Manager, we're able to natively point and click to enable that periodic assessment to get that data. And moreover, we're able to set up our maintenance configuration windows in order to ensure our patching cycles, just like we would Configuration Manager. So for example, here, I could double click into schedule updates, and I could select a collection of devices, a group of Azure Arc enabled servers. And I could set up a maintenance scope. I could set up if reboot is required. I could add a specific schedule to that. And moreover, I could use dynamic scopings, including post and pre-run scripts as well with my OS patching. So it really showcases this modern OS patching and assessment experience akin to what you have with Configuration Manager and other third-party tooling today. So that's Azure Update Manager, and that's just one of the free benefits included in Windows Server Management enabled by Azure Arc. Another core capability that's top of mind for our customers is actually Azure Policy. So here I am, and I'm going to go into our Azure Policy view. And with Azure Policy, you have the centralized governance and reporting perspective from a benchmark and compliance perspective across your Azure VMs and Azure Arc-enabled servers. Now, a key piece of that compliance and compliance reporting is Azure machine configuration. So every Azure Arc-enabled server has baked into it machine configuration, guest configuration capabilities. And this allows you to audit and set OS and application settings on your Arc-enabled server natively. This is also available as a guest configuration extension for your Azure VMs. And so when it comes to our Azure Policy view, we're able to get out-of-box reporting in terms of our compliance. And moreover, we're able to look into point-click remediation. So if there actually are issues with some of the Azure policies running on our Arc-enabled servers, we're able to select those and we're able to set remediation tasks to actually fix those on our Azure Arc-enabled machines as well. Now, if we want to really double click here, we have this view with guest assignments. We're able to see specific OS settings and application settings that have been configured for our Azure Arc-enabled servers. So for example, here I have a audit secure protocol, and I'm able to double click here. And we have visibility into all of the different facets, all of the different guest assignments with my audit secure protocol that are being applied. And we can see into what's compliant and what's non-compliant as well. So for example, here I could double click into this audit secure protocol guest assignment, and I'm able to see that this is non-compliant. And I'm able to see it's non-compliant because it's not able to find any secure TLS protocol. So here, for example, I have a secure protocol that's checking the TLS 1.2 settings for my Azure Arc enabled machine. So that really showcases just one example of how we can go into our Azure Arc view, and we can use these guest assignments for robust governance and configuration capabilities. Now, the next one I want to talk about with our Azure Arc enabled servers is actually change tracking and inventory. So this is top of mind for a lot of customers that are thinking about what are the software running on my machines and how do I put this into Azure Resource Graph to be able to query, to be able to see what the change history as well. Well, Azure Change Tracking and Inventory, powered by Azure Monitor and with our log analytics experience, is actually going to surface that. So here I have a bunch of machines where I could enable our Azure Change Tracking and Inventory experience, including my Azure VMs and Azure Arc enabled servers. And I'm going to double click here into this one machine, the Arc DPWS, which we were looking into earlier as well. And I'm going to actually zoom into the change tracking inventory experience for that Azure Arc enabled server. And as that pulls up, we're actually going to be able to look into the change history for this Azure Arc enabled machine. And so we can see some of the Windows services that have changed over time. We're also able to see inventory and event status as well. Now I can switch over to the inventory view. So that was a change analysis where we saw what's changed on this machine. And in this inventory view, I actually have reporting of all of the software on my machine, etc. So I'm able to see what's actually applied on this machine across the board. And you can see some 570 different software that we found. We would also be able to double click into the different Windows services, the registries, the files on this Arc-enabled server. So it's a really robust service. And we also have status on the reporting of whether these Windows services are reporting. And so you can think about using that data and being able to query that through Azure Resource Graph at scale. Now, the final piece that dovetails with this change tracking inventory I want to showcase is Azure Run Command. And so this is natively available in general availability for your Azure VMs, but this is currently in public preview for your Azure Arc enabled servers. And so with Azure Run Command, and you can couple this with Azure automation capabilities, you're able to remotely run scripts and securely run those scripts on your Arc-enabled servers. You're able to create those scripts, you're able to delete, get the status, list them, update those scripts. And this really focuses on that modern custom task sequence capability, if you're thinking about how that matches with Configuration Manager. So you're able to remotely run scripts on your Arc-enabled servers, and that can be critical in terms of remediation, in terms of fixing settings, and in terms of getting your server into a compliant state as well. So there's a lot of troubleshooting use cases that opens up. And again, this run command capability allows you to do that securely with the Entra integration from Azure for your servers running outside of Azure as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up some of the key capabilities that are included in Azure Management. And again, this is just a tip of the iceberg of some of the core management capabilities that we have available with Windows Server Management enabled by Azure Arc. So you're probably thinking now, this is a great set of capabilities, but where are we going next in terms of some of our upcoming capabilities? Well, we've heard you loud and clear, and some of our new functional capabilities are really focused on closing the gap with Configuration Manager, and that's focused on software distribution. So for Azure VMs, you already have natively available today virtual machine apps that allow you to upload applications to Azure Compute Gallery, specify Azure Arc-enabled servers to distribute that to, akin to what you have for extensions. We're bringing support for virtual machine apps to Azure Arc-enabled servers as well this calendar year. Additionally, we're integrating with Azure Update Manager from an application patching perspective too. So you have both software distribution and you have application patching. The final piece is you saw Run Command currently in public preview. We're taking that to general availability with the Azure Gallery view and the ability to sequence those run commands as well as a portal experience as well. So we're really focused on closing some of those core functional gaps from an application distribution, application patching, as well as a task sequence perspective with Configuration Manager. In addition to those new functional capabilities, we're also bringing in unified experiences and onboarding. So that includes at-scale solution onboarding for our management services. We're able to point, click, and select a bunch of Azure Arc-enabled machines we want to actually enable and configure these Azure Arc services. We're going to bring in unified consumption and overview experiences. You're already starting to see that with the Azure Arc overview. We're going to bring together more and more out-of-box reporting. And finally, we're going to enable AI-enabled scenarios through Azure Copilot integrations, and that's touching all of the different Azure management services that we spoke to today. So we're really unifying those experiences, making it easier to get started from day zero, bringing you those out-of-box reports so you have visualization that you can start with, and then we're focused on simplification and automation where we can ease the customer experience with Azure Copilot. Now, the final set of investments we have around the ease and maturity of the platform. We understand a lot of our Configuration Manager customers are using distribution points, and so we're focused on delivering local caching options for networking constrained environments as well with Arc, so be on the lookout for that capability. Moreover, we're looking into maintenance and approval windows for Azure Arc in a uniform and consistent way across all of our different Azure experiences, akin to the maintenance window experience available today with Configuration Manager. And finally, we're enriching your ability to group the collection of devices, and that includes exposing hardware inventory of the Arc-enabled server in ARM. So you're able to use that from a dynamic scoping perspective beyond just the Azure tags that are available today for the grouping of devices. And you can really use those server properties as well, akin to sites with our Azure Service Groups capability. So you can see a lot of investment across new functional capabilities, unified experiences and onboarding, and an ease and maturity of platform that are our core Azure Arc-enabled server roadmap focused on delivering that really effective modern server management experience for our customers. Now with that, you're probably thinking, wow, these are a bunch of new capabilities. I want to provide feedback. I want to get involved. Well, join the community. We actually have the Azure Arc Server Forum, which is a monthly newsletter with updates focused on our server management capabilities. We also have a monthly forum where you can join, both virtually through our Teams meeting every month or watching our recordings on YouTube, where you're going to see the demos on our latest capabilities and have an opportunity to provide feedback to the product group. And finally, you're going to get access to the latest previews and roadmap capabilities. So you can sign up here in our Arc Server Forum using this QR code, ak.ms Arc Server Forum sign up form. And so we look forward to really engaging with you in our community and joining us in this journey of delivering that modern server management experience across your hybrid, multi-cloud, and edge environments with Azure Arc. And so that's a wrap with my section. And thank you again for taking the time to listen and learn about what we've got with our modern server management capabilities with Azure Arc.